Hi guys, this is Anders. Today we are having a look at Hevyocity's new plugin Punish, which is essentially 3 different compressors, 3 different saturation type plugins combined with a transient shaper and then an EQ at the end of it, with a slight difference in the interface in the fact that you can tie everything to one main parameter and set that up so it moves all with one switch to build kind of weird patches and strange automations that go on with the sound. So let's have a little look in what it can do. I've got a few different things up here. I've got a full track, snare channel, just a riser sound and a bit of a vocal from a track that we're working on. I'm just going to put that together and see the different ways in which you can use the Punish plugin. So on here I've got the plugin just on a track that I've been working on that I finished up recently, so this is actually the master session for it. We've just got all of this turned off at the moment and we've just got Punish hooked up on there. Now the way this works, the compressor section goes first, saturation, transient, then equalizer. Now the equalizer's got a pre and post. It's either right at the end of the chain but before the limiter down here, or right at the start of the chain, so before the compressor, so it effectively switches it over here to change the order left to right. On the compressor section there's 3 different types. Got the console, modern and classic. They are effectively just different sounds. The console is modelled on the console used in the New York studios where this was developed. Modern, I imagine, is digital. Classic, who really knows what a classic compressor is? Maybe it's working on something like the LA2A or 1176. Don't really know, there's no specification for it. It does just change the sound of how the compressor responds though. Saturation, so vintage, modern and tube, fairly standard. Transient shaper, it's got a little sort of thing going on with it. It works similar to Native Instruments one, which I believe is a soft tube plugin. The key thing is the hold here is the amount of time the transient stays active. So when it catches a transient, it elongates it. That's what hold's effectively doing. The sustain is then its dip off. Notice as well, most of the first 2 here, so the compressor and the saturation, have both got this low pass filter plugin. What that's doing is just not affecting the lows of the audio, so it just lets the lower frequencies pass through, and when you grab it here you can see what it's going to. It's got a full range on it, and that's on both, so that's not working like a sidechain or anything like that. It just lets those lower frequencies pass through. The key thing to it really is, if you look at this middle section here, it's got a great little animation on it. So when it's like this, it's effectively off and nothing's really taking effect, and if you push it up it gets more and more aggressive until it's this weird warped eye looking thing. Now if we click edit, you see a bunch of these parameters turn white. While it's in edit mode, if you grab any one knob, it will change that white value, and that is how much it's being applied. So this start point just down here to this end point just up here is applied across this. So as this goes up in percentage, it moves it just that amount there. And when you go off edit, you can see the thicker bands are that area. So you can link all the things together and then effectively modulate this and drag this up, and you can hear what it does. Let's have a quick listen. So I've got this drum and bass track up here. It's fairly standard drum and bass track. It's not been mastered in this case because we've got all plugins turned off, but you can hear what this does to an overall track. It goes from fairly useful and nice and subtle to fully destroying the audio. could be pretty useful on a full track. If you just wanted to add something really subtle, you'd need to be really careful in how you're applying everything. But the settings I've got at the moment was just basically experimentation and just to see what pushing each thing does. If we do it now, I'll just turn all of these off and we'll listen to what each one's doing at its absolute maximum. As well, it's good to note there's a mix knob down the bottom here, which is effectively a parallel processing. So you can put that on 50-50, you'll get 50% of the original track and then 50% of the saturation. So you can max it out like this and then just apply it really gently. We'll have a look at that in 2 ticks. Something else useful to note there, you see the transient shapers on button is going red. That just shows it's clipping within the channel, but the limiter at the end is then catching that. There's nothing particularly fancy with the EQ, it's just a low and high lift, no Q parameters or anything like that within it. So while okay on a full mix, I found it to be much more useful already on individual channels. So this is one of my snares made for another track. It's a really sharp, aggressive snare, but it's quite good if you start using punish on it. So let's just listen to it effectively naked. So it brings loads of the top end out. It sounds more like a live snare, and then you can actually really punish it as well. And this for me is where it's a much more useful plugin rather than on a whole mix. Okay, so now we're using the mix knob at the bottom and it's putting less of the punishing in and more of the original, so you can blend the two. And that right there, that's given me a whole new snare to use in only a couple of seconds, which is really, really useful. It works quite nicely as well on effects. So here I've just got a riser from another track. I've got exactly the same preset that I've just put together. I think, yeah, there we go, from the other one. And if we just do that up with the riser, gives that really nice building effect. And if we push it even harder, yeah, it works really nicely there for that sort of thing as well. What would be quite nice as well, we're going to look at the vocal now, is some multi-band functionality. So if we could saturate different parts of the sound spectrum differently, even if there was just a separation of high and low perhaps, rather than just allowing the lows to pass through. You'll hear Y in here, so there's some quite sibilant S's and things going on. It'd be good to be able to catch those slightly differently, because when we push this quite hard, it really brings them out in a not nice way. So you'd need to work on that a lot before you could then apply the effect you would like.
Riding all night long with you by my side, nothing left to say, feeling emptiness inside.
It's bringing a lot of the harshness out in the S's there.
Riding all night long with you by my side. Riding all night long with you by my side.
And that's where some multi-band functionality would be really great in this. Lot of modern saturator plugins allow you to do that and just grab that particular area or not treat a small area if that's what you needed. FabFilter Saturn's a perfect example where you could have it applied above those S sounds and below, and then you could even compress just the S sound just to get everything you want out of the one saturator plugin. That'd be a really great addition to maybe see in the future. Could just be added with another couple of knobs just to say where you want to add the saturation, if you want to do it in just a specific area, or even if you could split this into two and apply it that way, or even a mix knob for specifically for the saturation area. Something else that would be really great to see would be an auto gain for the compressor. So when you automate or push this middle section and it applies the compressor, you can either have it set to the exact value you need here, so it pushes it up in time, but that doesn't necessarily always work with the audio. So if you could just have a switch that would auto gain based on the threshold and ratio settings that you've got and how much is actually being taken out up here, that would be a lot better than just pushing the output up. So like an auto gain switch for when you're doing that sort of thing would be really useful. But otherwise, overall, really great sounding plugin. I'm going to be having more of a play with it. I'll probably do another couple of videos on it if need be, but it seems to be a lot better on single audio rather than complex sounds. It distorts them and crushes them a little bit too much. You have to be really gentle with it, whereas on that snare sound you heard, it was brilliant. And yeah, it can absolutely decimate it and you still get a great sound out of it. I mean, let's go mad and just push loads of stuff up. Oh, it's absolutely savage neuro sounding snare. So that's a huge difference if we go from start to finish here. Yeah, it's going to be great for that sort of effect. Well worth looking into. There's a demo of it, guys, so you may as well go grab it and try it out. But overall, awesome plugin. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.